everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrea. It's nice to have you guys here. Today I have the first of what will probably be at least a few self-publishing chats, self-publishing diaries, just videos talking about my self-publishing journey. I know I want to be documenting this both for my own personal record, but also because that's just kind of what I do around here. Whatever I'm going through, I put it on film, I share my thoughts, and I share it all with you guys so that if any of you are going through the same thing, you've got a little bit of extra insight, extra advice, learn from my mistakes kind of a thing. So this first one is going to be kind of how I wrote my novel. I've talked about the novel, I've given some details, not a lot, but more on the novel specifically is coming in future videos. But I wanted to take some time to kind of rewind a bit, go back to well before this channel started, to how I came up with the idea for this novel, how I wrote this novel, and kind of giving you the backstory of the writing process for the novel from beginning up to where we are now, and then give you an update for where we are now, as well as answer some of the questions that you guys very kindly posted on my Instagram stories. I put a little question box up asking what you would want to know about how I went through this process. I've got my laptop here with my notes on things to talk about. So if I look down, I'm just looking at my notes so that I don't leave anything out. So as I've mentioned, I've got a novel. I'm editing it. It'll be the first book I've ever published other than my dissertation, but I feel like that's different. So my first creative work that I'm publishing. And yeah, so how did I get started? It's not my first novel. I think I will publish my first novel, but when I decided I wanted to try to self-publish and see if I could turn either of those books into some kind of passive income stream, even if it's a passive income trickle, because they're both just sitting on my computer collecting digital dust. So if I could take a little bit of time, edit them, and publish them and just see what happened, it's not like I'm having to start from scratch writing a novel. I don't think I would be going down this path as a possible source of supplemental income if I didn't have a novel at all. But because I have two manuscripts, I thought, okay, let's give it a try. So my first novel that I wrote is book one of a series. There will be a sequel to the novel that I'm about to publish, but it just felt like this one is going to have a little bit less work up front, whereas I need to kind of outline the other one and make sure that I know how that series would end. I already know what the sequel to the novel that I'm publishing will be. I have pretty good ideas, so I feel like working on the next one in that series will be easier than the first novel I wrote. So the first novel is a supernatural book. The novel I'm publishing is a contemporary women's fiction, contemporary women's romance, and just felt like I could get that one polished up and published a little bit faster. Writing my first novel was an experience. I had never thought of myself as a writer. I didn't really think I could do it. But then I did, and I finished it just before going back to grad school. So I thought, okay, well, I've done this once, maybe I could do it again. I was inspired to write this novel, the romance, by my first trip to London. I fell absolutely in love with London, and when I came back to Arizona, I could not stop thinking about it. I was thinking about London, daydreaming about London, fantasizing about London, a life in London. What if I could move to London, 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 London? And so I thought, okay, if I'm thinking about it this much, maybe I should channel it into something more productive and less obsessive. And so I had the idea to write this novel, and it was kind of based on both my first visit to London and subsequent visits, but also where my life was kind of at the time. There's definitely a lot of me and my personality in the main character. It's not an autobiography. I wish parts of it were. That would be nice. But it's definitely kind of just my imaginings and fantasies of what life would be like if I moved there, and kind of trying to answer that question of what happens when you stop living the life that you think you should live and start living the life and working towards the life you want to live. What happens when you stop doing what you think you should do and start doing what you want to do? And is that possible? And does the reality live up to the fantasy? So those are just some of the kind of themes that the book touches on. So I wrote it in starts and stops over the course of several years. So throughout that first master's degree and throughout all of my PhD, and I didn't really finish it. I didn't have a completely finished draft until kind of the beginning of this summer. I had an unfinished but nearly finished draft by like May, and I was really struggling on the ending. So I sent it to a dear friend and said, I don't know how to end this. Can you read it and tell me as a reader, as an objective reader, how you would want it to end? So she kind of got to choose the ending, and she kind of validated my opinion that I thought it needed to end sooner than I was ending it. There was a point where I thought I could just chop it there and then write an epilogue and just end it, and she agreed that that was kind of the best thing. And so at that point I then had a completed manuscript. So I went back and started doing a lot of edits and just polished it up. I sent it to her again. She loved it. I then sent it out to a few other people. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So going back to the writing process, I wrote it in starts and stops over the course of those years. In the beginning I would work on it in 15-minute increments, 30 minutes at most. It was something to do that was creative every day because I was teaching, and I was teaching as an adjunct instructor, going to graduate seminars as a master's student, and just feeling like I wasn't getting to be creative anymore. So I would leave to go teach about 15-20 minutes earlier than I needed to, and I would go to Starbucks, and so that extra time would give me time to wait in line if the line at Starbucks was long, but then if it wasn't, and if I got through the line, then I would sit and write for 15 minutes, 20 minutes before I had to leave for class. I wrote a lot of this book while traveling. I'd say about 75% of the book was written in London. Maybe 60% of it. 60 to 70% of it was written in London. 60 to 70% of it was written on my iPad. So I would just bring my iPad with me, and anytime I had 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I would work on it. I had a little Bluetooth keyboard that attached to my iPad, and so that's how I started writing the book. I would write a lot while traveling, so every time I would go to visit, I would make huge progress. I'd write 2 or 3 or more chapters. The 2 summers that I spent living in the UK doing study abroad and then independent study abroad, I would write huge chunks of it, several chapters of it. My visits always kind of gave me extra inspiration and extra stuff to write about, and so I would take advantage of those times, and then I would usually continue working on it for several days or a couple weeks after I would return back to Arizona, and then life would kind of get in the way. And again, because it was just a hobby and not a serious project, I wasn't spending a lot of time on it. But then as I got close to the ending, it was like, I need to finish this. I just feel bad that it's not finished yet. It's been like 7 years, more than 7 years. I should be finished with this. So towards the end, I started working on it in 30 minutes to 1 hour increments almost every day to get it done. And now I edit every day for at least 30 minutes, and I try to do a little bit more on the weekends. And I definitely have learned that you think that writing a novel is impossible. You think that you don't have time, but as with anything, small forward movement action adds up over time to big results. And so 30 minutes, like I've managed to go through, I just finished my second big pass through of edits on the full completed draft. So I've edited it a lot. I've read it, or at least the beginning parts of it, several times now, because every time I would come back to it after not touching it for several months, I'd go back and reread what I had already written, and so I would always like clean up certain things along the way. But since having a complete draft, I've gone through 2 major developmental editing passes on it. Then after having my friend read it a second time, sent it out to my test readers. I've sent the book out to several close friends to read and give me feedback, and then I've been making edits based on that feedback. Not everyone has had time to read it, so I'm glad that I sent it out. I think I sent it to like 7 or 8 people, and I've gotten feedback from, I think 3 of them have read it in its entirety. A couple of them have read it part of the way, and so I've gotten feedback on what they have read. So far the consensus is good. People are generally enjoying it, so I'm taking that as a good sign, but editing it based on feedback is definitely an interesting process. I'm trying to balance feedback and constructive criticism with what feels right to me. Ultimately, it's my story, and I have to be happy with it. And if I were to make a change someone suggested that I didn't fully believe in, and then I got a negative review on that change, I would be really pissed. I think where I'm struggling now is how much more editing do I need to do? It's never going to be perfect, and at some point I do need to release it and publish it. I know at some point I'm gonna have to stop. So where we are now is there is no release date set, but I think I am close to being able to commit to one. I'm hoping to have the majority of the edits, like the developmental structural edits, done before I go to London, so that November will, when I get back, will be primarily final copy edits and proofreading, getting it formatted, checking the digital proof on Kindle, and the digital proof for, and the physical proof for the print-on-demand books, because you will, if I can figure everything out, you should be able to also buy a hard copy of it, paperback copy of it. So check those proofs and then set a date, maybe try to do some pre-orders, and then publish it. So I'm aiming to have it published, my tentative date, but again, don't hold me to this, but this is what I'm trying to hold myself to, is sometime the first week of December. So I think classes are done December 4th. So sometime within the week after that, like the end of that week, early the next week, I want to try to have everything ready, but then to be done with the semester when I'm actually then hitting publish and letting it go out into the wild to all of you lovely people. Tentatively the beginning of December. I do want it to be out before the end of this year, and I would like it to be out before Christmas so that you could maybe give it as a gift to someone, or just take advantage of time off that you have during the holidays to sit and read a book. Part of some of the chapters do take place over the holidays, so I think it'll be a nice cozy read. So hopefully you guys will think the same. I'm loving every time one of you comments on another video where I mentioned the book that you are excited to read it, that you can't wait for it to come out. It just makes me so happy, and I'm excited that you guys are getting excited, so keep that up. And I promise, I'm not trying to drag this out. I am trying to get it out as quickly as I can, but I also don't want to put out a product that isn't yet right. I will be starting to promote it more on social media. You will be hearing me talk about it more on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. All the links to those different accounts are down below in the description box. If you have any more questions about it, I'm going to answer some questions in just a second, but if you've got other questions or things that you specifically want me to share or address in a video or on Instagram or whatever, let me know and I will make sure that I do that, because I do want to make sure that I'm sharing as much of this process as you guys are interested in seeing. I'm excited. I'm excited that you're excited, and I don't know, I'm trying not to be overly optimistic, but I do just have a really good feeling about it. Every time I go back and read it, I'm laughing in the right places, I'm smiling in the right places. I have read this book several times at this point, and it's still making me laugh, and it's still making me smile, and it's still, I feel like most people would be sick of their novels by this point, and I still absolutely love it. So I'm kind of thinking that's a good sign. So I'm really excited to be sharing it with you and to start picking up the marketing and the promotion of it. That's kind of my side of things. Now I wanted to answer a few of the questions that people had asked. I love when people ask questions. So I had 5 questions posted through my Instagram stories. So the first question is some things you wish you'd knew before starting on your journey. You know, it's hard for me to really answer that for either of the books, because I didn't really think anything was going to come from them. Both novels were purely for me, purely for my own creative outlet, with the thought that maybe one day I would try to get them published, but no real serious thought to that. So yeah, it's hard for me to know what I wish I'd known. I think I just wish that I had stuck to a more consistent schedule with writing. I wish I'd given myself permission to write more. It felt like because it was a hobby and just something I wanted to do, that made it less important to do and less of a priority. And I think as I've gone through my PhD and now this kind of year and a half after graduation, I'm realizing that just because it's something that I want to do and not something that I necessarily need to do, that doesn't make it any less important, or it doesn't mean that it should be any less of a priority. That something can be a priority even if I only prioritize 30 minutes for it. That still gives me plenty of time to get other stuff done during the day, but it also ensures that I'm spending at least a small amount of time every day doing something that I want to do. So I guess that would be the thing that I wish I'd known before I started on the journey. The second question, any fun Easter eggs that I've included? Well, I think the people that know me best will recognize a lot of things in the book. A lot of my favorite places are mentioned in the book, a lot of my favorite places in London. A lot of the main character's name is Eleanor. A lot of Eleanor's observations of London are things that I observed, thoughts that I had. So there is a lot of me in the character. There's a lot that's different, and I'll talk about that later. What I would love to do once the book is out is some kind of book club thing here on YouTube. Like everyone who's read it have like a book club video or like a live YouTube video where you guys can ask me all of your questions. So once people have read it, I might start explaining a bit more of the Easter eggs. There's also going to be some content that I'm going to film in London later this month that will go up once the book is out, that will also get more into like the places and things that have inspired different elements of the book. So there are Easter eggs. How easily they will be kind of spotted by readers will kind of be determined by how well people know me. But I think even people who've just been watching this YouTube channel for a while will also recognize things from like my London vlogs and stuff like that. The next question, how do you choose characters' names? I do that differently. Like my first novel, I was definitely looking up like meanings of names, and the characters are all in that book. All of their names mean things that relate back to some element of their character or their role within that book. With this book, because it's not a mystery, there's none of that in this, it's just kind of about life. It was more just names that I really liked, so I don't think the names have any particular significance. The main character, Eleanor, it's discussed in the book, she is named partially after Eleanor Dashwood from Sense and Sensibility, so there's some of that. So how I pick names, it's a little bit of everything, but it's definitely how much I like the name and does it kind of fit the character. The fourth question is, what made you decide on the characters you included? I'm assuming you mean like why certain characters just get added in. It's based on plot. I do work really hard as a writer to make sure that characters aren't just plot devices, that I don't create a character just for the sake of moving the plot forward or causing a conflict in the plot or something like that. So every character, at least in my head, has their own story, and I know that there will be a sequel to this book revolving around the two main characters, but then I also have spin-off ideas for some of the supporting characters. So some of them will have their stories fleshed out, but honestly, I have at least a certain amount of backstory in my head for every single character. Some characters have a lot of backstory that is not ever fleshed out in this novel, that will get fleshed out in spin-offs and stuff. And so those are the characters that I know I can do a spin-off of, because I've got so much in my head about those characters, even though it's not all coming out. So it's important to me that every character in the book is a character and has something about them. Even if it's just a few lines that get mentioned, I still want you to feel as the reader like there is something to that character. I create a world of characters that then interact with each other rather than creating the plot and then create characters solely to drive that plot, if that makes sense. And then the last question is how you went about researching the publishing options, best place to start looking. Honestly, I started with Google. I just started Googling self-publishing, traditional publishing, self-publishing versus traditional publishing. What are the differences? What are the pros and cons of each? And found a ton of resources out there. There are so many resources, and I definitely recommend consulting a wide variety of them and also questioning who was giving the advice. So there are some resources that I found that were really pro self-publishing, but there are also businesses that are designed to help people who are self-publishing. So obviously they're trying to market a product there. So there was some advice that I kind of took with a grain of salt. There's a couple books that I found, Every Author's Dream by, I think his name is Mark Allen Edelheit. That was really good. I've got another ebook that I'm reading that I think has more information on like launching your book and like things you should do around the time of the launch. So I just started looking everywhere, but I think generally Google and YouTube alone will have a lot of good results. There are so many great blogs dedicated to publishing that have analyzed like self-publishing versus traditional and have really kind of listed out the pros and cons. But YouTube and Google have definitely been kind of the main places that I've been looking, and just probably spent quite a few hours now researching all of this and kind of figuring out what my options are, what the best choice is, and I'm feeling pretty confident about that. So now I'm at the stage of really kind of figuring out what the kind of technical side of like actually getting it formatted, doing the formatting for Kindle, getting it uploaded into the Amazon Kindle system, checking the digital proof. I'm still researching kind of the actual like publishing aspect of it, because I feel like I understand generally self-publishing and I understand writing and editing, but it's like the formatting and uploading to Kindle and like all of that stuff that now I just want a little bit more research on. And then the kind of launching and marketing and promotion and social media promotion and stuff is what I'm looking at now. So yeah. So thank you for the questions. If you have more questions, please leave them in the comments below. I can definitely do a Q&A self-publishing video, Q&A about the book. Some questions I don't want to answer until closer to the book coming out, so there will be more of these videos giving you more behind the scenes of this process and more information on the book. As soon as I have a cover, I will do a cover reveal, which will also be a reveal of the title. A lot of that I think I've decided on a title, but I'm still sitting with it, but I just can't think of anything better. So yeah, so I'm excited to continue sharing more about this with you all. And I'm loving how excited you guys are, so please keep that up. I promise I'm getting it out as quickly as I can, but I do want to make sure that I'm delivering a finished product that I'm happy with, that I think you guys will be happy with, rather than just rushing to get it up. Bear with me, but it is coming soon. It is coming before the end of this year, and this year is gonna be over pretty quickly. Say hi in the comments. Let's chat. If you are writing, if you are interested in self-publishing, if you've got any resources to share, I would love to know. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you are not subscribed, and I will see you all soon in the next video. Thank you very much for watching this one. Bye-bye.